Hello, good evening, everyone. My name's Peter Titchburn. I'm the Executive Chair of SarcoidosisUK. Thanks for joining us. I've been Executive Chair since January this year, and I report to Chair of Trustees and the Trustee Board. The reason for this brief meeting tonight is to share a bit more information and run a Q&A on some changes that are coming up to the corporate structure of the or proposed, I should say, for the corporate structure of the charity. So this is particularly focused at members. Members who are paying members who have been members for more than 12 months have a vote at our special general meeting, which we are planning in a couple of weeks' time. But also, of course, this is important information for all of our followers and supporters who have an interest in the charity. I'll quickly give a sort of brief update. A pack has been sent out to all the members. Some stuff has been shared on socials. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we're proposing to do and why. And then what I'll do is I'll go to questions, put them in the chat. Someone will pick them up and pass them on to me, and I'll try and answer them as we go. So first of all, what SarcoidosisUK is proposing to do is to move from being an unincorporated organisation to an incorporated organisation. Sounds quite dry, but it is quite important. An unincorporated organisation would be best characterized as maybe a group of individuals who have clubbed together to do something, maybe set up a bank account, organize themselves. But in terms of the law, they're a group of individuals. Or an individual. That's an unincorporated body. An incorporated body is like a limited company, where the liability is limited to the company, and there may be owners, shareholders, maybe limited liability partners, but the liability for the actions, debts, and all the rest that sits with the limited entity, not the wider organization. And it's a very important distinction. So, for example, as an unincorporated organization, members are liable for the debts of the organization jointly, which means that if an unincorporated organization, for example, had a court judgment against them or was sued or something like that, and ended up with or ran up significant debts, it's actually the members of that organization who's on the hook for those debts. Whereas if you're a limited organization, limited liability entity, the liability of those debts sits with the assets of the organization entity and doesn't pass on to the owners of that entity or or members, shareholders, etc. So it is an important distinction. Now, SarcoidosisUK started out as a very modest organisation, maybe raising tens of thousands of pounds. When it reached a certain stage, it had to register with the Charity Commission and follow charity law. And since then, it has remained unincorporated. And now is a charity that employs several people, has leases, has various other risks, liabilities, and etc., and raises perhaps close to about £300,000 a year. So we've gone from what might have been maybe 10 years ago, a relatively small, unincorporated, relatively low risk body, to what is now quite a complicated and large organization. So we're now at a point where we believe that the risks and challenges of such a large unincorporated organization mean that what we should do is become incorporated. And we can do that by a couple of ways, which we have previously briefed the members. The first of those is, and the old school way of doing it, the only opportunity that used to be there in the past, was to become a limited company. Registered with Companies House, you're still a charity, but you're also a limited company. So one of the challenges with that, and one of the reasons why charities have tended to be a bit wary of that in the past, is you end up becoming two things. You end up becoming a limited company to limit the liability, but you're also still a charity. Those two things mean that you're bound by both charity law and company law, which are not always the same and sometimes actually even conflict with each other. So being both a charity and a limited company is not ideal, but in the past that's been the only option that charities have had. And if you're talking about large national charities, National Trust, etc., they would have set up as a limited liability company as well as a charity. Relatively recently, 6 or 7 years ago, there became another option, which is actually to incorporate as what is known as a CIO. So a charitable incorporated organization. which means that you are registered as a limited liability organisation with the Charity Commission, and you don't have to register with Companies House as a limited company. That way, you limit liability. You still remain obviously wholly bound by charitable law, but you're not bound by company law. And obviously that reduces complications for charities. Rather than being a part of two things, they can just be registered with one, but still enjoy that limited liability status. That's what we're proposing for SarcoidosisUK, that we go from being unincorporated to incorporated. Unfortunately, not quite as easy as just filling in some forms and saying, can we be incorporated, please? What you actually have to do is to create a new incorporated body. So in this case, it'd be a new charity called SarcoidosisUK with a new charity number with obviously identical or very similar articles, etc., similar structure, aims, all those other things. And then what you have to do is to move all of your day-to-day, your assets, your liabilities and everything, employees and everything from your old structure to the new structure and shut it down. It's a painful administrative step, but reality is the outcome is that you end up with a charity that is now incorporated. It's called the same, has the same objects, same operations, sets out to do exactly the same thing, but is now incorporated. And that's what we intend to do. So for those supporters, followers, etc., that are watching today, reality is you'll see nothing change. We aren't intending to change what we do, other than to continue to grow what we've been doing in the past. So we'll continue to provide the support, there'll be advocacy, we'll still raise money, fund research, provide all the information, and all of those other things we've always done. And hope to improve and do better, but they'll be done with a different charity number. That's pretty much the only difference that a follower, supporter, etc. will notice. In terms of members, there is a slightly different take on it, and that is because in a future SIO number organisation, as opposed to now, where every member has a vote, in the future, the direction and management of the charity will be directed by the trustees only. Now, that might sound like quite a big step, but in reality, almost none of our members, great supporters, and their support is very much appreciated. And of course, they're involved in lots of activities, support groups, and all the rest of it. But actually, when it comes to the day-to-day running of the charity and the business of the board and the trustees and the membership, actually engagement is very low. So in the future, really what this is doing is just reflecting the current organisation of the charity as it is at the moment. So to recap, what we're proposing is we need to become incorporated. We think the risks mean that we need to. A recommended option is that we do, and that we become a CIO, a charitable incorporated organisation. And as we migrate to that, we close the old charity down, the new charity continues to do what we do. And for members, for followers and supporters, that would be seamless. For members, it does change the voting structure. So that's pretty much the summary. Hopefully that's sort of a quick summary that spelled it all out for people. So what I want to do is to invite questions. So if any of you have any questions, please just type them in to Facebook, and they'll be sort of passed on to me. And I'll answer them. So just as a starter question we had last time was, what does this mean specifically for members? So like I said, our current structure and articles are actually very confusing, not well written, and quite contradictory on a lot of fronts. Another reason why we would want to change them. Is to take the opportunity to alter them as we become a new charity and take those issues out. But members who have been a member for more than a year actually have a vote at board meetings, so you can come along and vote on the adoption of the minutes, on the accounts, on proposals put forward by the trustees and actually on adoption of the trustees themselves. Reality is, from year to year, almost none of those members exert that right. So the reality is the trustees, as they stand, in board meetings, make those decisions on behalf of the members and supporters. And what we propose in the future structure is basically a reflection of that, of what is already in place when it comes to the way the charity is in fact run from day to day. So hopefully that makes sense. Are there any more questions? Unfortunately, I'm not seeing any others come through. Okay, so either I've done a very good job or what we've communicated already has been self-explanatory. So no other questions come through. Hopefully that all makes sense. Obviously, if you do have any questions, still post them. Sorry, wait on, just one question has just come through, my apologies. So will this change how people become trustees? In effect, no. So at the moment, oh, sorry, it will make a slight difference. So in terms of how we decide who the trustees are, we actually have effectively roles and responsibilities. So you have treasurers, somebody who may be an expert in communications or whatever. And when someone leaves, what we try to do is to target a particular skill set and invite people to be considered for a particular skill set for a particular board vacancy. So how we tend to do is to approach in that way, but equally it doesn't change how people can come forward. So if someone has a particular interest, they can get in touch with us. If there's a trustee vacancy come up, what we may do is invite people to either formally or informally, maybe through our website and whatever, to express an interest and become involved. The selection is done by the trustees, and then it goes to a board meeting for them to be voted through. So reality is, in practice versus what we do currently, no, it will make no difference to how people become trustees. So people can put themselves forward, be considered, and it will go to a vote, and then at a board meeting, annual general meeting, and new trustees will be appointed. In terms of payments to trustees or accountability, does this change payments to trustees? All of our trustee roles are unremunerated. I'll get that word out. So all of our trustees are volunteers. So that includes the trustee chair, the treasurer, all the other trustees. All of these do this on a voluntary basis. And I think I'm right in saying that there are only very, very limited situations in which trustees of charities can be remunerated, and my understanding is that's actually quite rare. So in terms of payments to trustees, they can be recompensed for expenses if they had to go to, I don't know, to represent the charity, at some sort of evening presentation, dinner, whatever. But other than remuneration of expenses, no payments at all. In terms of accountability, so that's an interesting question. I don't. So trustees have accountabilities under law. So those accountabilities as trustees exist now, even though we're not an incorporated body. So members, obviously, at the moment are effectively like, they're effectively owners. And unfortunately, if something did go wrong and there was a huge debt or whatever, they're severally responsible because we're unincorporated. But the trustees, who are also members, also have specific duties under charity law. So they have those accountabilities in this new structure. As a CIO, trustees won't be paid, can't be paid, and their accountability under charitable law would be the same. So hopefully that answers that question. I think I can't see the Facebook feed, so I'm having questions fed through to me. But my understanding is now, at the moment, there's no more questions. So if you're quickly typing, give me a second to react. Otherwise, if there's no more questions, look, by all means, still reach out to us, drop us a message, email us or whatever and say, look, actually, I thought about after that presentation, I've got a question. What we'll do is any questions that come along, we'll try and post them in a Q&A so that so that people will be able to read them. But please, if you've got any questions that come to you after this, do get in touch and let us know. We'll do our best to answer it. Thank you very much for your attention and for coming along. And hopefully we'll be speaking to each other again soon. Bye.